Welcome to this explainer. Look, in today's high-stakes clinical lecture, we're taking a strict, advanced biological look at hepatic lipid accumulation. Let's immediately dispense with the myth that stubborn visceral adiposity, what you might colloquially just call belly fat, is a localized gastric failure or a simple lack of willpower. It is absolutely not. It is fundamentally a failure of the hepatic system. Today we're addressing the true root cause of metabolic stagnation.
Now, before we address the precise biological mechanics of the solution, we have to critically examine the failures of standard interventions. You might be wondering, why do low-carbohydrate diets and continuous physical exertion often fail to mobilize this specific dense tissue? Why does it just persist even when you're practically starving yourself with severe caloric restriction? It's because you are treating a symptom rather than addressing the core metabolic organ actually responsible for lipid oxidation.
Here is our clinical agenda for today. We'll cover the hepatic origins of visceral fat, the stagnant liver paradigm, bile synthesis and emulsification, the biliary flush mechanism, and finally, the specific clinical protocol and prognosis. Let's get right to it. Section 1. Hepatic origins of visceral fat. Let's completely redefine what you're actually observing when you see external weight retention.
So, visceral fat. It's not just a localized aesthetic issue. Actually, scratch that. It's not an aesthetic issue at all. It is fundamentally a systemic symptom of a liver that has just ceased to break down fat for energy. When healthy, your liver actively oxidizes lipids. But when it's overwhelmed, it traps them right there locally. This drives systemic inflammation and profound insulin resistance. You are not looking at a stomach problem, folks. You are looking at a congested, failing liver.
And to put the sheer scale of this pathology into perspective, a rigorous 2024 study from The Lancet reveals that exactly 33%, literally 1 in 3 American adults, experiences hepatic lipid accumulation. That's what we commonly call a fatty liver. And the wild part, it goes almost entirely undiagnosed by primary physicians. This right here is the primary biological barrier to basic metabolic function.
Section 2. The stagnant liver paradigm. Let's examine the actual physical mechanics of this hepatic stagnation, driven by our modern, sweet diets.
I want you to think of the liver's functional tissue like a highly efficient biological sponge. A healthy hepatic state, that acts as a clean sponge that easily absorbs and wrings out toxins and lipids. But decades of processing seed oils, refined sugars, ultra-processed foods, it induces profound metabolic stagnation. The organ literally becomes a clogged, greasy mass. It simply cannot wring out the trapped fat. And let me be very clear on this point. It absolutely does not matter how cleanly you eat today. If that biological sponge is clogged, systemic lipid mobilization is biologically impossible.
Moving on to Section 3, bile synthesis and emulsification. To clear out that biological sponge and restore our metabolic baseline, we have to introduce the precise endogenous fluid responsible for hepatic filtration.
Here's the thing. The liver doesn't, and frankly cannot, process fat autonomously. It relies entirely on the continuous synthesis of bile. Bile operates as a biological emulsifier. Think about it like this. If you try to wash a heavy, grease-coated pan with just cold water, the lipids repel the water, right? You require soap to break those lipid bonds. Well, in human biology, bile is that soap. Without robust bile flow, those lipids remain unoxidized, your energy completely plummets, and visceral adiposity expands.
All right, Section 4, the biliary flush mechanism. The absolutely crucial point here is understanding how we can pharmacologically and nutritionally trigger this sluggish bile to flow freely again.
Take a look at this mechanism documented in the clinical literature. A 2023 paper in the journal Cells demonstrated that bitter compounds, and I mean specifically the kind that physically interact with the taste receptors on your tongue, not something hidden inside a capsule, they trigger bile release within minutes. Historically, human diets were absolutely loaded with bitter compounds like dandelion and arugula, which biologically signaled the hepatic system. But our modern, overly sweet diets have almost completely eradicated this vital biological signal.
This brilliant cascade is exactly what we are trying to exploit. Step 1. Bitter compounds stimulate the receptors right on your tongue. Step 2. That neural signal travels straight to the brain, which immediately primes the gallbladder. And step 3. The moment your digestive tract encounters a precise, small dose of lipid, the gallbladder physically contracts. It forcefully flushes that primed bile directly into the gut to dissolve those stored, stubborn fats.
Which brings us to Section 5, clinical protocol and prognosis.
We're going to transition now to the practical application of this biology using a specific 60-second clinical protocol designed to trigger this exact pathway.
You need to study this formulation carefully because it's comprised of 3 highly specific ingredients. First, dandelion root tea. It needs to be steeped incredibly strong, absolutely no flavorings. A 2017 study confirms this is the primary engine of the flush. It directly stimulates bile production. Second, an organic lemon. The peel oils and enzymes here provide tremendous digestive stimulation. And yes, it must be organic to avoid severe pesticide contamination on the peel. Finally, exactly 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. This is our crucial lipid trigger. This is what forces the gallbladder to literally dump the bile into the system. Now, the parameters for executing this protocol are absolute, non-negotiable. You must consume this first thing in the morning on a completely empty stomach. You're going to sip it slowly over a 10-minute period. Why? To maximize that neural bitter signaling on the tongue. Then you maintain a strict fast for 30 to 45 minutes post-consumption, so the liver works entirely uninterrupted. And listen to me, absolutely no honey, no sugar, no sweet additives of any kind. Sweetness instantly neutralizes the bitter biological signal. Also remember, this protocol acts as a metabolic multiplier only if you're maintaining a foundational diet of whole unprocessed foods.
Expected physiological response. Let's examine the precise clinical timeline and the acute responses you should observe over a 14-day period.
This clinical timeline is fast. By day 1, usually within 20 minutes of your first dose, you should note a distinct gastric warmth and a reduction in bloating. That confirms acute biomovement. Now, days 1 through 3 represent an adaptation phase. Mild nausea is possible, and if it's severe, just reduce the lipid dose by half. But push through, because by days 4 and 5, you'll observe the complete cessation of morning bloating, much better bowel regularity, and even clearer skin as your hepatic filtration improves. By 10 to 14, that's when the metabolic cascade reaches the adipose tissue, resulting in the structural mobilization of visceral fat and a very distinct loosening of your garments around the midsection.
Of course, as with any rigorous biological intervention, there are absolute clinical contraindications we must cover. If you are missing a gallbladder, you must restrict the extra virgin olive oil dose to a mere teaspoon initially to avoid completely overwhelming your system. If you have active gallstones, strict medical clearance is mandatory. Bitter herbs actively mobilize these stones, which can cause dangerous blockages. Furthermore, if you are currently taking blood thinners or specific liver medications, consult your physician first, because dandelion root does present active pharmacological interactions. We want to be smart about this.
So ultimately, understanding this advanced biological mechanism leaves you with a critical decision regarding your own metabolic health. Will you continue fighting a superficial, frustrating battle through mere caloric restriction, literally just attempting to starve a symptom? Or are you finally prepared to leverage clinical biology, trigger that biliary flush, and clear the hepatic sponge to restore your metabolic baseline once and for all? The science is abundantly clear. The application is now entirely in your hands.